Check it. In part 2 of this school choice series, we take a look at one of the biggest criticisms against school choice, and that is splitting the dollars. Splitting the dollars refers to how you pay already into the public school education system through your taxes, but as a parent, you may opt to send your child to a private school, for instance. And so therefore, you have the concept of splitting the dollars between the private school that you're sending your kid to and also the dollars that you're already paying into the public education system. There's also another way to interpret splitting the dollars, and that is if you didn't send your child to a private school, that money, those funds, could be devoted to the public education system and give that system more resources so that they can better teach students, they can better the system, they can better everything. But instead, you're splitting the dollars. However, even the most staunch supporters of public schools, like Matt Damon, will opt to send his child to private school. And even public school employees may opt to send their child to a different school outside of their district. They may even go buy a house in that district so that they could send their kids to a school in that district, right? And so Neal McCluskey of the Cato Institute once again shares with us what we all want, what Matt Damon wants, and that is choice.
One of the most interesting things I've seen, and it means something, especially in California, but you may know Matt Damon, you probably know him as an actor, but his mother is an education professor in Boston. And she's a major defender of public schooling, an opponent of school choice. And her son, Matt Damon, has sort of been active in what she wants to do, sort of fighting education reform, opposing school choice, but he sends his own kids to private schools. A lot of people say, well, that's hypocritical. I don't actually think it's hypocritical because he's not saying, give me money to do it. He said, I'll pay twice. But his concern is, he said, look, I just can't find a school that has progressive pedagogy, that teaches kids in a progressive way. Public schools are all sort of the traditional, sit at desks, go to class when the bell rings, and he wants something different. Well, most of the really pedagogically progressive schools are private schools because a public school generally has to, sort of go with the center of mass of what most people are comfortable with. Private school doesn't. He should want school choice so that there are more of those kind of schools that he wants, and maybe so he doesn't have to pay twice, but so more people can access and you have a proliferation of the kind of approach to education that he would like. But we don't see a lot of buy-in with progressives because they also seem to be committed to this public schooling system, even though it doesn't provide what it is they want out of education.
So the progressive pedagogy, is there a specific definition for that, or are you, because the way that you described it was more conceptual, as if like, well, we just want to make sure that the teaching methods that are being taught are progressive. I guess I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's a spectrum, so just take this as a generalization. But you have kind of traditional education, which most people are familiar with, which is you have a teacher who sort of lectures, you may be given projects that you work on, but they're sort of the one running the show. Progressive pedagogy is much more what's called student-centered, where students will pursue studies and projects that they think are interesting. And teachers, and the role of educators is to sort of guide them, to help them. There's a way of sort of summarizing this that, again, is usually used pejoratively, but the traditional model, they say, that's the sage on the stage, and progressive is versus the guide on the side.
Yeah.
And right. Matt Damon would like more of these sort of schools. The poet, the former teen poet laureate who spoke at or delivered a poem at the inauguration, went to a school like that. I think it was in Los Angeles. And it was a private school. And there was lots of philanthropic help for her to get there. But this was another example of, if you want kids who come out, sort of creative and sort of thrive in this kind of less structured, more guide on the side, student-driven schooling, you should want school choice, because most of those schools are private schools because they're too outside of the box for the average person to accept that as education. And public schools tend to be geared toward what will the average person accept or at least tolerate.